Just FYI. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Yay Community Ask a Coach Hour. We're here with Stephen Van Zutphen. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Can someone comment and let me know if there's a really bad feedback happening? Because I can hear myself, but I want to make sure that that's not happening on your guys' end. So if someone can just post in the comments that whether there's feedback or not, that would be great. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and get started. Unfortunately, I think Steve's video is having some issues. So just bear with us one moment while we figure this out. Steve, no, I can't hear or see you right now. So I think that's probably the computer side. So everyone just bear with us, testing out new technology. Steve, show. One second. Can everyone bear with me? Hi, Steve. Is your sound on your computer? And do you have a... Okay, yeah, because we can't hear anything from you, and I can't see you on the screen, so... Yeah. Okay, well... Let me comment in the Oh. Hi, everyone. Just for having some slight technical difficulties. There we go. Great. Okay, now. Thank you. Perfect. Awesome. Steve, can you hear us? Give us a thumbs up. Hey, how's it going, Steve? Can you hear me? Hey, Steve, are you hearing me? Hey, Steve, can you hear me? We can see and hear you. Okay, well, apparently, guys, there's a problem with the...
You can hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. I can't hear you.
Oh, no.
Can't see or hear you anymore.
Hi, Steve. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Okay, so this is a little bit weird because apparently you guys can hear me, but I can't hear anything or see Claire for that matter. But you know, let me just start with a little introduction about myself. Apparently my volume is a little bit high, so I will tune it down. I did put it up when you couldn't hear me. Is that better?
Perfect.
Good. Thanks. Okay, so let me start with a little introduction about myself. I'm a chemist by training. I went to university, then did a PhD in organometallic chemistry, so making new molecules basically. And after that, really went into research. So I continued at university, where sort of by accident I fell into a very nice invention, which was some polymers that interact with metals, and that really was the start of my company. So we patented these polymers because we thought they were really interesting and potentially useful for industry. Although we didn't really know where, what, and how they could be used, we felt there was something more than just a molecule. So we patented it and tried to sort of present these patents to companies and see if they would be interested to buy the patents. And we pretty much immediately found out that it doesn't quite work that way. So even if an idea or an invention is a good idea, it needs to go a little bit further before you could go and actually sell it and bring it to the market. So that's when we decided to start up a company as a spin out from the university. And I guess that's where I changed a little bit from a researcher to an entrepreneur. I'm a little bit confused because I can't hear anything, so I'm just speaking into nothing, which is a little bit funny. But okay, I'm assuming that you guys can hear me, and if you can't, just post a comment so that I know I can stop and not talk to myself for the rest of the day. So anyway, with the company is when I started being more interested in business development, and where I learned how to bring very technical products to B2B customers, which I guess is the topic of today's discussion. When selling into a business, I think it's a little bit different from the normal interaction that you would have as a consumer, or when you're trying to sell something to consumers. Because as a business, you don't really feel like buying anything. It's not like you're going to have an impulse buy into business. When you're selling into business, you have to tap into some kind of customer pain. So you have to spend some time with the customer, learn about the customer, and then understand his pain and see if your product, or if your product in some kind of adapted version, can help to alleviate this pain. Our company started selling products pretty much like a year or a year and a half after we started up the company. So that was really fast, and we were really excited about that. But in the beginning, it was just sort of one-off sales. So we managed to convince someone to try out our product and to buy a bunch of our product. And as we were doing that, we learned, well, that's great, that's interesting, and it makes you a little bit of money. But it isn't really what building a B2B business is about. If you want to build a business, you want to concentrate not so much on the first sale, but on the repeat sale. And how do you drive a customer from a first tryout sale to a repeat sale? I think that is really the key of marketing in the B2B space. And at one point, we hired a sales guy into the company, and thought that he would just go out and sell loads and drive up our revenues like crazy. But in fact, what he did, and I learned a lot from him, what he did is look at the company, look at what products we really have, and just spend a lot of time understanding our products before even talking to any customers. And then when he went to the customers, he didn't go and sell the product. He didn't explain. He didn't force the customer to go and buy lots of our product. No, instead he listened to them, and he spent time trying to understand what drives this customer. Why did he even invite us? What is bothering him in his process today? And only when you have done that, only when you've done that groundwork, can you start talking about your product and how that can help them going forward. So that was really an eye opener for me. That is pretty much the introduction that I kind of thought of, and it's just really weird not being able to see or hear anything.
So everyone just, can't hear us. So
Let's do this.
unfortunately, we're both on the screen for you guys.
Okay, here's a
but we're
question
not able to talk.
from how does identifying your target market differ in the B2B setting than in the B2C setting? Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. So I'm someone who's used to selling technology, right? So I always start with the technology, and I believe that it's just so weird. So you start with the technology, and you know what your technology can do, and your target and how you're going to identify your target is then basically going to meet customers, going to see people who can, where your technology alleviates a pain. So maybe maybe let me try another way. I think there was a lot of questions about relationship building when you do B2B and how that is different from B2C, and I think that is really the key that we can hammer on today. So when you're making purchase as a consumer, you go into a shop and you buy something. You hardly ever go into a shop many times and make friends with the salesperson before you buy something. And even if you buy something as important as a car, you might spend some time with a few salespeople, but it's still quite limited. I think in B2B it's very different. So in B2B it's all about relationship building and about building trust between each other. The thing is that a business doesn't necessarily want to buy something. So if you go there and say, look, I'm a salesperson, I want to sell you something, they're not going to be very interested. A business is interested in running his business more efficiently, more effectively. So I deal a lot with factories and production managers. And production managers, they're interested in their production running smoothly. And, that is their first and foremost worry. And when we go and see them with products that can help their production become more efficient or help their production become more profitable, what we do is spend time with him, show that technically we understand what he's doing, and show that we understand what is a problem for him in terms of his production. And once you've made that connection, and once you've convinced the other party that indeed you know what he's talking about, then you can start introducing your products, and you can say, well, look, because you work in this way, and because you have some losses in your your machine that doesn't quite work, well, here we have a solution for that. We have an alternative machine, or we have a way to make your machine work better. And introducing products like that really makes a difference and makes you come to sale. Unfortunately, it's very slow. So there was another question about how long does it take to make a sale in B2B, and I don't want to generalize because I don't know every business, and I have only a limited experience of the chemicals business that I'm in. But I can tell you that making a sale in less than 6 months is really quick. Usually it's a year, and during that year you have to do a lot of work and a lot of unpaid work, and you have to prepare for that. You have to have the cash to be able to do that. But the upside of that is that once you have a customer, once someone is buying from you on a regular basis, he'll probably keep on doing so for a very, very long time, so long as you keep on serving him. So this time spent initially to get your customer is very long, very slow, very expensive, but it pays off on the longer term. I had an interesting question I found here as well is like, do you go to trade shows? And because of course in business to business there's endless amount of trade shows, and personally I hate going to trade shows. I would rather do anything else with my day than spending time at a trade show. However, sometimes, you have to do it. You have to do it because everybody is there, and it's important for the market to know that you exist, that you're out there, and that you have a product offering that people can look into. If I have the choice, I will always go to a conference rather than a trade show, because at a conference you meet the same types of people, but you also can learn something, during the talks and everything. But both conferences and trade shows can be very efficient in the sense that a lot of people are together in the same place for a limited number of days. So you can plan your visit and make use of your time to visit people that would otherwise require a lot of traveling. But a lot of the time that you spend on the trade show is just waiting for someone to come along to your stall, and that's awful, and it kills your soul, I think. Have I ever sold something on a trade show? Definitely not. But has a contact from a trade show who's introduced me to someone led to sales? Definitely yes. So, you have to do this kind of thing, but don't spend too much money on it. Okay, there was another bunch of questions from Solomon Japon here. And basically a lot of questions about financing. So how do you finance your B2B business? How do you pay your employees from a start level at a startup B2B business? That is some very important questions as well. So let me try and hash that down and answer it bit by bit. It's very important for your company to be funded. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the best funding that you can get is revenue. The best funding you can get is from selling something. You can spend an awful lot of time running after investors and trying to build a case that investors should invest in you. But unless you've proven in one way or another that you're actually able to make money, a lot of investors will listen to you, will invite you, will take your time, but won't necessarily invest in you. So it is a chicken and an egg situation. If you don't have money, you can't generate sales. And if you don't have sales, you can't get the investment to generate the sales in the first place. But my advice would be start as small as you can, start as light as you possibly can, start with something that doesn't cost a lot to make, so it costs a lot to start selling, which could be consultancy. You can sell your knowledge to begin with, but something that generates a bit of cash. With that bit of cash, you can then build and improve your product, and have your first sales. Once you have your first sales, that is the right time to look for external investment and try and get investors on board to stimulate your growth. But to start off with, people are not going to invest in you right from day one. But that is not specific to B2B. I think that is very general for startups. Related to that, there was also questions. Well, how do you pay your employees, or do you pay your employees from the startup level? And I think, you have to be very honest. If you want people to add value to your business, you'll have to pay them one way or another. If you have cash, that can be salary. If you don't have cash, it can be part of the company. But of course, you can only give part of the company away once, and that has its limits as well. And even shares in a startup company, they don't buy you breakfast. So it's very important, once again, generate that first bit of cash so that you can start building your business. And building your business is also hiring people and paying them for the work you do. Okay, I'm hoping that this is still clear and people can still hear me. Is there any other question that someone wants to suggest?
So I was just going to ask to talk about relationship building a bit more, and the importance of that within B2B sales and marketing. And
Okay. So Claire is speaking now, and I will shut up until she tells me to speak again.
So we're making it work, guys. We're making it work. But I'm going to ask him to engage with the topic of relationship building and how it's on a much longer time frame than it is in B2C, and that those relationships are really, really important for building trust. And how does he do that? So I'm going to let him go. And we'll see how this works.
Okay, so again, this is very weird. Apparently Claire spoke to you guys, but I didn't hear a word. I can only hear myself. So relationship building. I think what's very important in sales and in business development to realize is that you need to see people more than once before you make a sale. And even today, when there is a lot of business that goes through the internet, I think in B2B, if you go into the production of your customer, if you do something that's critical to the business of your customer, you're going to have to go through the old-fashioned way of meeting people, making contact, showing your face to people. In order to know who they're talking to, who they're dealing with. And in a first meeting, I find a lot of the time you spend talking technically, showing technically that you know what you're talking about, that you understand the customer's business, and that you understand how your product is relevant to your customer's business. Then once you've gone through that introduction, of course, you can revert to internet and email or telephone calls to do follow-up, to start maybe a testing procedure or to start a piloting procedure. And then again, you have to show up and you have to hold their hand during piloting steps and see what you can do to make it a success. And then be there for the startup or the first sale of product when you go live with your customer or when you scale up with your customer. And this is the part in sales that takes long. This is the part in sales that's expensive because you don't get paid for it. But this is the part that pays off. This is the part where you build the trust that then gives you business for the years to come.
Just posting a question.
Okay, so here's a question on brand identity. How do you build a brand? How do you ensure that customer understand your message? That's an interesting one because let's say from 2011 to 2017, I was running technology from a startup, Magpie Polymers, and for the past 2 years or so. That same technology was added on to technology at a much larger company. And I'm doing the business development within this larger company now for a bunch of mining-related companies. But in both cases, there's a lot of brand building going on, and it's a little bit different. So let's start with the startup. I think something that is difficult for us startup entrepreneurs to realize, but important, is that if given a choice, people will avoid buying something from a startup. So if you have the choice, if you can buy the same product from an established company that has been around for years and years, and a startup that just comes in, you're tempted to go for the safe choice, which is the existing company. And so you need to build the brand of your startup, so that you become, let's say, reliable enough or credible enough for the customer to make the buy decision. And how do you do that? Obviously you're not going to buy billboards or anything like that. You do that by going to the customer and being knowledgeable, know what you're talking about, and build credibility. And once the customer is convinced that you know what you're talking about, then the rest follows automatically. Now, at the larger company that I'm working now, we're also doing a lot of brand building. So it's a company that's grown a lot with external acquisitions, but it's a chemical manufacturing company that sort of manufactures a lot of products in the background. So almost everybody in the world will have products made by Italmatch chemicals in their house, but hardly anybody will know from it. So when you go to customers, you say, look, we have all these great products, and they say, okay, great, but who are you? I've never heard of you. And so again, you have to explain them, well, we're a large company. This is the type of products we make. This is the type of business that we're in. And again, build the credibility in order for the customer to say, okay, if I buy with this guy, he's going to be around next year. He's listening to me. He understands me, and therefore it's safe to make a buy with you. Okay.
Okay.
There's another question here from Mushin, but I don't see the question.
Okay. He seems to be having trouble with the question, so I'm going to send it to Mushin.
Okay, can you fire the question to me?
Yeah, let's put it on screen.
On screen.
Oh, not seeing that. Okay. Let's try again.
Okay. I spoke about the brand, right? Personal tools or strategies you implement in your work. Okay. Personal tools or strategies that you implement in your work. Well, I don't know, and I don't know if I have any great authority to speak about this. How to make a platform aggregator model more effective. Okay, you're going to have to help me there, because I do not know what a platform aggregator model is.
So maybe, Musin, if you can post what you're talking about, we can hear from you a little bit more detail.
Okay, here's an interesting question. So, if you bring a commodity type product to a customer that the customer could also buy in another way, how do you make sure that the customer keeps on buying it from you and not from some third-party supplier who most probably is cheaper? We do some business where we basically buy and sell. So we buy products, we rebrand them, and we sell them into specific markets. And of course, you need to put a markup on that, because you're putting in your effort, you're putting in your time. So unless you have a markup, it's not worth your trouble. So the first question is, how do you build that business? And the second question is, how do you defend that business? And it comes back to the same thing. So a customer doesn't necessarily want a product. A customer wants a solution to his problem. And if you have the technical knowledge to understand what his problem is and how a product can bring a solution to his problem, you're in, and the customer will buy from you. Now, that is how you start the business. How do you defend the business from a cheaper alternative? Well, in business to business, risk is a very, very important factor. So if you have a production that runs very well with the product that you just sold to them, and the customer finds out that that product can also be bought online from somewhere else for a little bit less, he still has to take the risk of changing, and it may or may not work. And in many cases, if a production is down because a product didn't work, that's very costly for a typical business. And an online platform that's really cheap, it can offer products, but it doesn't offer solution. It cannot listen. It cannot adapt. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that your customer understands the value in the fact that you have taken a risk away from him, and that is what he should be paying for, and that is what he should be happy to pay for.
Just posting another question. So, reading the question.
Okay, here's another question about what has changed over the course of my career and what's different from when I started. And I think it would be really pretentious of me. I mean, I'm not that old. I haven't been in sales for that long to say, things have changed during my career. But I would definitely say that I have changed and my approach has changed during my career. And I think the key word here is listen. So when I started off, going from this research area much more to sales, I thought that it was all about products and pushing products. So my first sales meetings, if you can call them that, was me running through presentations, showing how great our performance was and how it was 10 times better than anything anyone's ever seen before. And then sit back, cross your arms, and say, well, do you want to pass an order or not? And I pretty much quickly learned that that doesn't go very far. That is not the way to do business. And if I go into a sales meeting today, I spend much less time speaking. I always try to speak less than the people on the other side, and spend much more time listening, and spend much more time trying to figure out if it even makes sense to speak about my products. And only when I've gone through that process, when I've assured myself that it does make sense, that there is something that I have that they need, that's when you start to get more sales-like. And for me, that was a big change, and I can see there's a big change in terms of result as well for that one.
Okay, everyone.
Okay, I think I'm just gonna walk away from the screen for 1 second to switch on the light, because it's quite in the north of Europe. It's getting dark, and I don't want to sit in the complete dark. Hold on.
So while you're doing that, we'll just have anyone posting questions in the comments and answer. Although we're having troubles, he can still answer them. So
okay, that should be a little bit better.
Great. So
right.
Let's move on.
Claire, is there other questions that are popping up on your screen there?
Yes, let's do this one here. Just send it over to Steve. So see what we get live.
Okay, here a question about the consultative approach. Interesting, yes, and I can give an example of that. So there is one customer that I've been working with for almost 4 or 5 years now, that has been buying some interesting amounts of products more recently, but that I started. Well, I mean, I went to see them to sell my product, but they were using a competitor product, and they were using a competitor product wrongly. And I also knew that my product would be better than the competitive product. And the way that we started with this customer, and the way that things turned out, I figured that the best approach wasn't to attack the competitor head on straight away. So I first I observed what they were doing. They explained me how they were using the competitor product, and I said, well, if you change your conditions, if you use this competitor product differently, you might get slightly better results. And they did that, and they got better results. But they still weren't good enough. And so I said, well, you can change something else, or why not try our product? Because if you try our product in your now modified way of working, you'll probably get even better results. And so they tried our product, and so they got even better results, and so they started buying our product. And so this customer, clearly, we developed this customer because we started as a consultant. We didn't get paid for the consultancy in this case, but that was the way that we built trust. That was the way that we demonstrated that we knew what we were talking about, which made him comfortable buying from us in the future. Okay, then there's another question still about financing. So if you if you're looking for funds, if you're looking for investors, it's important for them to own part of the company. Well, let me put it slightly differently. If you give nothing in return for an investment, that's called a present. And in business, not many people give each other presents. So is it important for an investor to own part of the company? It's important for an investor to have something in return of his investment. And that can basically be two things. It can be part of the business, part of the company, or it can be money. So if somebody wants to help you grow your company, you have to give them something in return. The easiest thing for you seems maybe give away some shares. Because that doesn't cost you anything today, and he becomes an investor, and everybody's happy. But of course, once you give away shares, you create expectations, and you may have to sell your company at some point to turn those shares into money, and that may not be what you want to do. So the alternative, you mustn't forget, you can take money and say, well, look, I'll pay you back more money, and that's called a loan. So I think a very, very good way to develop your business, if you have people interested in investing in you, is to turning that into loans. Loans that you pay back based on certain milestones, based on time, with interest, or with some upside because of the risk that the people are taking. But you do have to give something back. Nobody's going to fund your business for nothing. So that is very important. Okay, here are key challenges to overcome when starting up. I think most of the time that I spent searching at Magpie was really to find a niche where we could make a difference. So we all attack markets that are big in general, because if there isn't a certain size of market, you're never going to make any money. Having said that, as a startup, it's very difficult to compete on quantity. It's much easier to compete on quality. So when you have a very big market, it's interesting to, within that market, to look for niche applications that are much more precise, that are much more small, but where there is less competition and where you can make more of a difference. So either through innovation or through service or through whatever your strong point is, but when we started, we thought we had a technology to take metal from any kind of water and probably depollute things, and that's what we started our development on. And it took us a little bit of time, but we found out that although that is an existing market, It's very hard to make a difference on that market, and it's very hard to be better than the competition. There's some very good products out there, and it's very hard to make money on that market because nobody wants to pay to clean up things. So we switched and tuned in and focused onto a niche in precious metal recovery. By the end of our startup, we were only working with platinum, palladium, and gold. So those are metals that are worth, more than $30,000 per kilo. Recovering those because we found that our technology could make more of a difference in those markets. So we were more innovative. We also found that customers were more willing to pay for money. So you're making money by spending money, which is always an attractive thing. And finally, because the niches that we were concentrating on were actually very small, we found that the large chemical companies, which at some point are your competitor, didn't have the time or the resources to concentrate on those niches and to build relations with our customers. So that really, opened doors and allowed us to actually grow the company. That was very important for us.
Just posting another one.
Okay.
Sending them across.
How was the ecosystem for you when you started? Supportive or hostile? Okay. I think that in the customer interactions that I've had, it's always been supportive in the sense that people like to speak about their job, about their expertise, about what they know about, and we spend a lot of time going to customers and doing exactly that. So that gets a lot of support. People are also interested in startups and exciting new innovations and all that. So that makes for a supportive ecosystem. Where that doesn't help is that being supportive isn't the same as writing a check. And going from nice meetings where people like you and invite you back to actual meetings where you can introduce products, start piloting products, and start making money, that is a difficult step to make. And at some point, you have to put your foot down and show that, although you have all the time of the world to listen to their problems, at the end of the day, the only reason why you're in a room together is because you want to build business. And so in spite of all the relation building that you've done and all the listening and caring and whatnot, you have to make sure that, unless this is going to turn into business one day, I'm going to end up doing something else. So it's maybe you who has to turn hostile at some point. And if you do that properly, everybody understands, and the next logical step can be a sale. Okay, here another question about teaching. So I don't know if you saw my introduction, but I think teaching is really, really important in everything that we do, and sales is no different from that. I think when you go into a sales meeting, an objective should be to learn something from the guy in front of you, and hopefully teach the people on the other side of the table something as well. So sharing experience, sharing knowledge, seeing how a similar product that this guy has was solved in some other situation, that kind of exchange, that really is teaching, and that is an important part of sales.
So I've just asked Steve for a personal anecdote from his own experience. Give us more clarity, if possible. This is a thinking stage.
Anecdote. I think one of the things that I also learn in doing business is that it doesn't always have to go right straight away. So some of the best relationships, some of the best sales relationships can be built up when things go wrong one way or another. And as an example, we spend a lot of time developing a product for silver refining with a customer, and this was a very difficult project technically, because silver refining is relatively dangerous. So you're working with nitric acid, which is something, it's a very nasty chemical that is both acid, but it can also react very, very violently with many things. So it can explode under certain conditions. And so we started working with these guys, and we knew that it was dangerous to start with. But we thought that our product, our innovation, could make a difference and could be used safely in their environment. And we went through a lot of testing, and then we did lab scale, and then we scaled it up slightly. And then while we were scaling it up, one day it went wrong. It went wrong pretty badly. Fortunately, nobody got hurt, but people could have got hurt had we managed it a bit worse. So the next morning, we were in their factory, and we were visiting, and we were seeing what went wrong and trying to understand. And we were really shocked, and so was the customer. And after a while, we worked together. We found what went wrong, and we put some new conditions on how to work in the future, so it wouldn't go wrong again. And now that is one of our best customers, and it's one of our best customers because we went through these bad things together, and we got out of them together, and that really made the relationship so much stronger. That you never know, but I doubt that if somebody comes along with a similar product to them today, that they would open the doors for them. They would, they have gone through so much with us, that makes them a very, very strong customer.
Great. So the next question is about
okay.
cycle.
I mentioned that the sales cycle is longer than B2C, and of course my B2C experience is pretty limited. It's basically just me being a C. So I know that when I buy something, I go into a shop and I walk out with whatever I bought. In industry, sales cycles are much longer, and I think that's related to the risk. So there's always a risk to change something in a production, and unless there's a very, very good reason, you might not want to change anything. And saving a bit of money generally isn't a very good reason to change something. So how long is a sales cycle? I would say 6 months, 12 months at least. How many people are involved? So we deal with production managers, the guys who run production, and they have to be convinced first and foremost. Then they're not normally the decision maker in the sales, that's procurement. But procurement does whatever the production manager tells them to do. So you convince the production manager that they should go ahead with the sale, with the buy, and then you negotiate a price with the procurement manager. But the procurement manager clearly has the needs to buy from you. That's what production told him. How do you deal with big egos in your business dealings? How do you deal with big egos in life? I mean, let people talk. If you're in a room with someone who wants to prove that he's the strongest and the best, listen to him. Let him talk. Let him try and understand what's driving him. And if you realize that person can become a good customer by tapping into his ego, by making him feel good about himself, then go ahead. No issue. Comes down to customer pain. If his customer pain is to be seen as a star, then take away that pain. Make him a star.
Great. That's a really good answer. Just posting the
Okay.
next one as well.
Here a question: do you work to appeal to a global market, or do you go more to regional sales or cultural sales? So in chemistry, you're very often in global markets. I mean, you're working with some very large companies, and they're all global. And we're working in the field of mining, so obviously that is a global activity. It's very much dependent on where the mines are, where the factories are, if you want to grow, you're going to have to go global. Having said that, as a startup, we concentrated on Europe. We concentrated on Europe for two reasons. First of all, because we were based in Europe and it was easy for us to travel. So we could do all the footwork, we could do all the visiting and relationship building without breaking the bank. And also culturally, we know how Europeans work, and that was what we were comfortable with. And I think the growth spur that our technology has made now that we joined Etelmatch is the more global approach. So Etelmatch is a completely global company with a Japanese sales office in Japan, a Chinese sales office in China, several US sales offices, all manned with local people. And yes, that makes a big difference. So I do a lot of visits now that are sort of joint visits. So I go with a sales guy. I do the business development side, and they make the actual sale. So they open the door. We then go through that door together, and I do the technical part of the discussion. I do the convincing. And the relationship building is something that we do together on the technical and on the let's say the local or the cultural level, and that is a different approach that needs more money because you can't always be everywhere, but it's helping us in our growth. Start local, and then once you have the power, once you have the sales, then expand, invest and expand.
Great. I think that's a great piece of advice.
Okay, here's a question about online, and again, I mean, my answers are going to be very industry specific. So I'm in the chemicals market, so you're dealing with goods, you're dealing with factories, you're dealing with people, and that business takes place in real life. It doesn't take place online. So we all have online presence. We have websites that are referenced, that can be found, and people can come in through emails or web portals or whatnot. But that's not where sales take place. For us in chemicals, sales take place because you go and see people, because you know people, and because people show you their factory, and it's the contact that works. It's easy to be in contact with many people at the same time. You can wake up early and do a call with China, and then go back to bed late and have a call with Canada in the afternoon. So the digital important is important in that sense, but the actual sale, the actual contact, that's made purely physical offline. Okay, here a question about is it important to follow up with a customer? What happens after you make a sale? So I think things only begin with a sale. I'm very much a believer of recurring business, of people who come back and sell, and the amount of investment that we put in growing customers, the amount of time that we spend in convincing customers, it has to be for more than one sale. So, if you start with something technical, you can start on a very small scale. You start scaling it up, piloting it, and then at some point, it's full scale. So you could call that a sale, your first sale. For me, that is the let's say the first trial, the production trial, and it's great, and you celebrate it, and it's a very important step. But the real prize is the second order. If a customer does a production trial successfully, and then come back to you for a repeat order, that is when you've done your homework, and that is when that you have something that you can really call a customer. So following the customer and his journey beyond the purchase is what it's all about. Okay, last question before we wrap up this speaking to myself a session that I hope has been somewhat informative to you guys. So some takeaway messages. Things that I have learned that I think could be useful for anybody in B2B. So I think that it's very important to have great products and spend a lot of time and effort in building great products. That's what we do in startups all day, every day. Um, but growing business, making actual sales isn't about the product. Um, when into your thing and you're developing, you think everything is about your product, and once you've developed the perfect product, it'll sell itself. But it doesn't work like that. It's the opposite way around, and you have to have a good product to open a door. But to make a sale, you have to spend time with the customer, gain his trust, and convince the customer that you're interested in his problem and that you're interested in solving his problem. And at some point, solving his problem will involve your product, and that's great, and that's where you generate your sales. But it's not about the product. It's about the problem that your customer has and the problem that you're trying to attack. Um, that is really the one thing that I misjudged when I started. Being a technology guy, I thought, products are everything, and once you have your perfect product, everybody will buy it. And it just isn't that way, and it's almost the opposite. Sometimes you can sell a mediocre product, but build a very good relationship with the mediocre product, and then as you improve, as you develop, you're a young startup, a lot of things are changing all the time. At some point you can come back with a better product, and since you've already built up all this relationship and trust, you can just introduce the better product, and the customer will be all the happier and stay a customer with you for a very long time. Okay, so I think Claire is going to wrap up. Thank you very much for this time, and I hope it's been useful for you guys.
Yeah, I think it's been an amazing session. Too bad we can't hear each other, but I think somehow we did make it work. So thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time to be here with us all today. And if any of you have further questions for Steve, you can always contact him directly through the Yay Community website. He has a profile there, and you can send him your questions, follow-up questions in relationship to this session or about anything in particular that he specializes in. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Sending a message. Bye. Oh, seems I have to take 2 clicks.